Oh my God. When you discover the power chord as a young, 13-year-old and the distortion box, you're like, oh my God, I figured it out. You're taught to make the tough choices and, don't take the easy path. And sometimes the easy path is where you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
Madonna was hiring DJs to produce her record, and DJs were becoming like rock stars. You're watching the dream evolve. Yep. And what's better than that? I think I was making like $45,000, $50,000 at my little space, and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. The next year we were making $450,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Creativity will prevail. Even though the future is, it's delicate and it's terrifying and it's fascinating.
Hello and welcome to the Career Journey Podcast, No Wrong Choices. Today's guest is the founder of the Cutting Room Studios in New York City, Dave Crafa. I'm Larry Samuels.
I'm Tushar Saxena.
And I'm Larry Shea.
We'll be your hosts for what will undoubtedly be a fascinating conversation about breaking into and thriving in the music business. Before we kick things off, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. Now let's get started. Now joining No Wrong Choices is Dave Crafa. Dave is the owner and founder of the Cutting Room Studios, a legendary recording studio based in New York City. That studio has supported countless great artists, including Grammy winners such as Shakira, Cardi B, David Byrne, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, John Legend, and the list literally goes on and on. Dave, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, Dave, what exactly do you do? What's your day-to-day look like? What do you do for a living?
Well, I do own a recording studio called the Cutting Room Studios here in New York. It's 30 years this year. So our job really is to help the talent become the best that they can and be relaxed and record them in a way that allows the best part of their performances to be captured and shared with the world.
Right.
Yeah.
In doing so, we have a great team, and we all really enjoy being the best at what we do.
Yeah.
We kind of are like a talent incubator in certain ways, as well as working with, well-known artists.
Right.
We have actually created through our ranks record producers, especially when Larry was with us in the late 90s. It's very I wouldn't say very common, but it's not surprising to have some of our staff go through the evolution of internship to getting a position with the with the company, whether it's an assistant and then working their ways through the ranks to kind of realize their own dreams and their own careers. And we've had a good many examples of that.
Right.
A lot of dimensions to our studio and our generations of families that have come through the studio.
You're giving me away here, late 90s. You're giving my age away here, Dave. Let's be careful with that.
Was that a secret?
Hey, you're looking pretty good, man. Look, Larry's hair has been gray since the 90s. I've never seen his hair like his normal color.
It's not as if people can't see the color of your hair, because obviously that's totally.
Who do you think gave me all this gray hair? Dave Crafa is who gave me all this.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
So no, full disclosure, we always talk about this. I worked for Dave. I managed Cutting Room Recording Studios from about 1997 to mid 2000. So about 3.5 years I was there managing.
It seems like
room.
so much longer, Lara.
I know you always say that.
I guess we've just been friends for
longer,
many years. So.
That's right.
Except for those
So
couple of years.
we worked. Yeah, we did have a couple of years. Not only were we not friends, we were kind of like, I'm never talking to that guy ever.
That's how you know you're best friends,
Trust me, we know how that feels as well.
Yeah, I bet.
Exactly. But yeah, it was, I had worked for Steely Dan, and when that facility closed, Dave was really looking to take a step become more professional, become more, hey, what do the big studios do, that kind of thing. So I was able to, put a mark on it for a couple of years and kind of come up with some brand new processes and things that we made a lot of money together.
We did.
Man. We did really
We did.
well, and we kind of took that step,
Yeah.
and it was a fun part of my career as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your career journey and the dream, though. Let's start at the beginning,
Sure.
right? Let's bring you all the way back to young Dave Crafa, however many years ago that is. I'm not going to throw you under the bus and give your age, but tell me what the dream was. What was the original dream? Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
I grew up in a suburb of New York City. I guess the music dream started probably in third grade when my best friend brought his guitar in for like show and tell. And I had this crush, even in third grade, on this girl, right? And of course I could never, ever, approach her. And then my friend brought his guitar in and played like some song. She came and talked to him, and I was like, what? I got to start playing guitar. This is like,
Power of music.
Yeah, power of music, man. It was amazing. So, I went home and told my mom and dad I wanted to play guitar, and they're like, okay. And then they signed me up for like classical guitar lessons, like flamenco guitar. I'm like, what? Not this.
That's not getting the girl. No way. That's not getting the girl.
No. Well, it could, like, maybe now.
Well,
but
I mean, it is. You're very skilled. Okay,
oh,
you'd be very
man.
skilled.
So I was like, I just got foiled. But at some point, I was just, the whole electric guitar scene. I just fell in love with the Gibson Les Paul. The shape of it, the sound of it. By the time I got into like seventh grade, in middle school is like a tough time for everybody, right? I felt pretty popular in elementary school, but middle school was like a whole nother story. And I remember there was this guy. He was in eighth grade, and I was a year younger than him. His name was Joshua Christian, right? And this guy was like my idol. And funny enough, he's still touring to this day. But and he's like a guitar virtuoso, and he's the one that really kind of started me on that path. I was like, I think it was like I saw him in the gym, and you know how the acoustics are in the gym, and he knew some blues scales, and he can shred a little bit, and I was just like, oh my God, like that's what I want to do.
Wow.
I became friends with him, and the guitar really kind of saved my ass in middle school, because I became pretty popular just because of it. Whereas, prior to that, people were picking on me, and I was like having to, get into fights, and, and it's tough. So that's a tough age for everybody. And I think, music really helped me get through that and find myself at a young age. So I always kind of knew that's what was going to go down. And at the same time that was transpiring, I had like this very big interest in science and rocketry. And I wanted to design my own rocket. And, I had like science kits all over my bedroom. So there was this synergy between art and science from a very young age. And I didn't, I thought I had to choose between one or the other, but come to find out later on in life, it all starts to make sense for me, where I've got both those things happening right now. So,
because the recording aspect and the engineering aspect sort of satisfies that.
Yeah, there was a scientific aspect of it. And, building a recording studio, and, I think the word recording studio is really a really ultra generalized term, because, people have their kind of idea or imagery when they think of recording studios, but a recording studio is a laboratory. That's what it is. And, you're experimenting with emotions and, sounds and, that also gets girls too, so that's cool. Like, so it's kind of
There's
got
an
everything
underlying
at the
theme here.
Right.
Yeah,
You
here's
know.
the theme.
Of
Get
course.
the girls, use the cool stuff, the
Right,
music,
right.
the
And
big
it's,
studio.
I always kind of wanted to be an astronaut to some, extent. And, look, it's kind of a very spaceship vibe in here.
Very
so,
much so. Always.
So it kind of scratches all the itches, and then
sure.
add sailing into that. And, which is pretty much, the closest you can be to as, being an astronaut. On Earth in terms of like open ocean, like, crossing thousands of miles of open sea, that's pretty space like.
For sure. So we know that you became a heck of a player. So when did you, I mean, you
don't know
became a
about that.
pro. I mean, there are these stories of you playing in recording studios. You almost went on tour, et cetera, et cetera. So
Oh, yeah.
when did you start to get good? How did you pursue that? Were you playing in bands in high school? Like when did you
Yeah.
begin to become a pro? How did you do that?
So I became more of an ear player because I wanted to, I wanted to play the songs that I was listening to. And mostly that was like Black Sabbath and the Bee Gees. So,
Interesting.
it was weird. Yeah, I was like a big Bee Gees fan. And funny enough, like I was like, one of the first records I ever had was like the Godspell
Soundtrack,
album.
yeah.
Yeah. And, that's like in the 70s. And there was this one song that had a major seventh chord in it. And I just fell in love with the major seventh chord. I couldn't get enough of it, so, I started writing little songs on my own with incorporating this major seventh chord that I could like play. Because it was like, you could move it up the fretboard and it would, you wouldn't have to change your fingering or anything. And it would, it just resonated with me, that combination of intervals. At the same time, I was, I discovered the power chord. Oh my God. When you discover the power chord as a young, like 13-year-old and the distortion box, you're like, oh my God, I figured it out. I can play Iron Man, like it's everything. Every song that you like does a power chord. And you're like, damn, man, I'm like 75% there. And then when you figure out the blues scale and where to like, oh, if I start the blues scale here, like I'm actually a lead guitarist now, like that and nobody had taught that to me. I just kind of stumbled upon it. And then, by talking to other people, they're like, oh yeah, that's the blues scale. And this is like, if you start here, you do that. So I just was like fascinated by that whole experience. And I realized at some point I need some formal training. So I took lessons, but I was mainly self-taught. The formal training came a little bit later. And it came in the form of committing to go to Berklee College of Music.
Also, you were a student over at NYU.
I was.
Right? You were a student over at NYU.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your time at Berklee, because obviously you probably went through the classes about theory,
Yeah,
and then
the boot
obviously
camp.
composing,
Sure.
etc.
Arranging,
all
all
those
that.
aspects. Yeah, arranging all those aspects of music theory and of music composing. Like, what was that experience like for you? Basically a self-taught guitarist who took some classes, but then when you actually saw, let's say, how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Ooh, yeah.
When you saw that portion of it, what did that really do to you? As a mad scientist of music, did that kind of put things together?
No. It kind of like really deconstructed what it was that what I wanted to do and where a lot of things were happening at that point in time. I think what was really important at that point was I came into Berklee thinking I was like, the local guitar hero, and realizing that I was not even close to the talent, a pure musical talent that some of these players, had. And it shook me up because I was like, oh, like, wow, I have to think in like, in several different dimensions at the same time in terms of like playing over chord changes and different, scales and like figuring it all out and then making it original and, practicing. And at the same time, technology was pulling me in a direction, all this new ways of creating music. I really, I really was humbled in a big way, and but I also at the same time found my place, realizing that hey, I'm not going to be the next Steve Vai, or
Right.
like, and I know what it takes to get there now and understand that, but there's something over here that I want to explore, and maybe
Yeah.
I can do some hybridization of traditional music playing, with my primary instrument, which was guitar, and somehow, incorporating, sequencing and the technology that was emerging at the time, to come up with something that was my own.
Yeah.
The idea of being able to be by myself and create a song, like layering rhythm track over top of melody, and then coming up with a percussion track on a drum machine, and like I really got into that. And I didn't have to be a virtuoso at any of those instruments to do it, and the technology allowed me to do it. And so I started moving in that direction.
This is what the Beatles were doing at Abbey Road, right? They were experimenting with music and technology and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just a brief description of Berklee, though, because a lot of people who don't, aren't in the music business or what have you, don't know what it is. Berklee College of Music it's a music factory essentially in Boston, Massachusetts, and the players who go through Berklee, they're the best of the best usually, and if you go there,
That's right.
you don't graduate because you're so good. Someone's going to take you and pull you on the road so that you can play music for the rest of your life, because it's just it's not a standard 4-year college. These guys are the best shredders in the world.
They really are.
And they go there and form bands and get picked off to
it's
go with Ozzy and whatever. You know what I mean? It's like one of those.
and some of the best jazz players in the world.
Absolutely.
It's really an honor to be there. And then when you stand in the face of that type of talent, you're just like, oh boy, I got to up my game. I got to level up quickly. How am I going to do it?
We used to call it Berserkly.
Right, sure. I remember that.
Crazy people. But so that's cool. So you're a player, but you're also now mixing in all the technological aspects and getting the itch to do that kind of stuff. So how does Berklee end? Where do you go next?
Well,
I know it was about a girl because we've already established.
Yeah,
Isn't everything?
I don't think my wife may be listening. I don't know. But it's in the
was a
80s.
long
Okay,
time
it's
ago.
the 80s. It doesn't matter to her.
That's right. That's right.
But so I entered Berklee because I was I fell in love. I was 18, and I was going to head straight out to LA and follow in the footsteps of my friends who all got cool gigs playing in different bands and were touring musicians. And back in the 80s, there was a guitarist called Randy Rhoads, and I knew his dad, and his dad was trying to set me up in LA. He kind of believed in me, and that felt really good. And I was going to go out there and, throw my hat in the ring, see what happens.
Speaking of Ozzy, Randy played for Ozzy Osbourne.
What?
Right?
Oh, yeah.
People don't know.
Oh,
this,
yeah,
Dave.
no,
You gotta
no,
tell
Randy.
people.
We have a diverse audience.
Right, right. Yeah, no, he did. He was Ozzy's first guitarist. And, he was, besides Edward Van Halen back in the day, who was just like this monster, player who, influenced so many guitarists. Randy was also like that. And I felt very fortunate to, have Randy's dad kind of go to bat for me and kind of make some connections in LA. She said, well, you can do that, but why don't you, spend a year, why don't you apply to Berklee? And I was like, I'm not going to get in there. So I applied, and I got in, and I was like, oh, shit, now what do I do? So I
You learn how to shred.
Right. So then I got nervous, and I started. I enrolled in Western Connecticut State University. I didn't enroll as a matriculated student because I had quit high school to play in a band. As a matter of fact, a band that I had been playing with had opened up for Metallica, like back in the day of the Kill 'Em All tour, which was nobody
wow.
knew
My
who the hell
God.
Metallica was. So I
What
had
year
seen
was
and
this?
tasted. That was like 81, maybe.
God.
Yeah. So,
Don't give away your age.
oh, why not?
That ship has sailed. I know.
So, no, so she got me to apply there, and I got in, and then I went to Western Connecticut State University to brush up on theory and kind of get ready, as a pregame to go to Berkeley. And at the same time, I got my GED. Funny thing is, like, I didn't have to send my SATs, which I never took. And I mean, I totally backdoored the system to get into college.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like I scam my way in, but like I just never thought that I was going to go because I thought I would be on the road. And so, my plans changed because I wanted to keep in close proximity with my girlfriend at the time. And it all seemed to work out, and it flowed in a direction that, I just rode this wave.
So how long was your time then at Berkeley in Massachusetts?
Couple years.
Before you.
Yeah.
So okay. So you didn't spend your quote unquote 4 years at
No,
Berkeley.
no.
What year then did you make your move over to NYU?
I broke up with the girl in I think it was 19.
This is a running thing.
88.
It is.
Oh yeah. No, when I broke up with her, actually she broke up with me. I lost my mojo, man. I was lost. I quit Berkeley.
Wow.
I was like, I can't do anything. I was really like pretty messed up and lost. Like, I had not made the transition to the hybrid Dave, computer guitar Dave, guy
Right.
yet. I was just like, oh, I need to take some time off. And so I did. I went home. I dropped out. I went home. I was, depressed, and I didn't, and coming back from Berkeley, I'm like, I suck. Like I can't, like, I'm not really good at my instrument. And I had a moment where I was just laterally drifting. Funny enough, some of the classes that I took at Berkeley, like my liberal arts classes, I really enjoyed the professors, and I was learning things that I hadn't learned before that, in high school seemed to be out of reach. And I was actually doing well in a lot of my courses, really well. And when I went back, when I quit Berkeley, I enrolled at UConn for a few semesters, and I was taking philosophy classes and I was taking mathematics, and I really enjoyed it. It was actually like, because it had never been something I felt that I was good at, and all of a sudden I was good at it, and I was getting it because I had
Right.
professors that cared. So that was my move to NYU, like, because I really wanted to now throw my hat in an arena that I never thought that I would ever be part of, which was, being part of a university, level program. I always thought, well, those are different people, and I was more blue collar, and maybe, maybe they looked down on me, So after taking a couple years off, between Berkeley and NYU, I started to think that I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to do something now that was very not music orientated. I wanted to really go to university and study like an engineering program. This is the science part coming back,
Right.
Right. And so I applied to several different colleges and universities throughout the U.S. I wanted to be on the West Coast, so I was kind of holding out to go to Berkeley, the UC.
The other one.
Berkeley.
The one with the
the
Y.
other
Berkeley,
one. It's
right.
spelled totally different. Yeah,
UC
exactly.
Berkeley, right.
And I went out there and and I also applied to NYU and all the other, schools that had like, University of Miami, they had like a engineering degree coupled with a music technology degree. So
Great program.
Yeah, exactly.
program.
My dad was like, no, you can't go to that. It's a party school. I'm like, but but it's an E degree, man.
Yeah,
But,
it's like number 1 or 2 in the
Right.
country for sound recording. Yeah.
I know. So that was kind of one of my first choices. But the thing was, NYU offered me some money to go, and I was like, no, I'm not going to be in New York. I've grown up here. It was like, I think this was like 89, 90, it was still kind of like an armpit. And like, I just wanted to see someplace else and start my future somewhere else. And anyway, decided to go to NYU to just visit for a weekend with some friends that were here. It was a beautiful fall weekend. I just kind of fell in love with the place. And I thought to myself, why am I stiff-arming this whole, thing? And, why am I holding back when everything is telling me to come here? I decided to go. And that's really one of the biggest things that I learned was sometimes you have to go with the flow. It's not selling out. It's actually following your destiny. And, everything fell into place after I made that decision. And I didn't want to go. And then I realized once I succumbed to the whole, all right, I'll do it. And it wasn't like, all right, I'll do it. It's like my 10th choice of where I want to be. But when I said it, I meant it. I was like, I realized I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I'm just going to roll with it. And when I did that and committed to where I was and what resources were around me, everything started to come into focus.
And fast forward
So that's
35
how-
years, you're still here.
No wrong choices.
Right.
Yeah.
No wrong choices.
So that was a big epiphany, really, for me to realize, like, oh, sometimes you can just actually go with the flow. Because I was taught, like, as you're all, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody. You're taught to like make the tough choices and don't take the easy path. And sometimes the easy path is where you're supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I realized that, and so that's how NYU started.
So
And,
you get there and you've come to New York and you're thinking about philosophy, you're thinking about engineering, you have all these other things on your mind.
That's right.
But, we know parts of your story. I mean, somehow you get pulled back into music. Somehow a recording studio starts to pop up in your dorm room. Like, how do you
That's right.
shift gears and how do you start to pursue music again?
Well, not to get back into Berkeley, but before Berkeley, I had a bunch of recording equipment.
Yeah.
And my roommate at Berkeley also had a bunch of recording equipment. So, when I left Berkeley, I had a bunch of recording equipment. By the time I, moved to NYU, I had like
In a full studio. Yeah.
I had a pretty cool studio. Like it was this
Wow.
16-track half-inch tape
Right,
machine
right.
in the dorm room with like, my Macintosh, and I had like a Ensoniq Mirage sampler and, a bunch of stuff.
All the stuff.
Yeah. And, I was programming stuff on Digital Performer and, and the guitar, it was really weird because like in the 90s in New York, hip hop was just starting to really hit hard, and club music, house music, techno, like all these things were happening that I was just like, what do I do? Like I don't know, and I, being Generation X, as you know, Lar, we were exposed to a lot of different genres of music. And I think that's our strength as Generation X, is because there was a renaissance of music in the 80s where you're listening to Fishbone and you're listening to, Bad Brains and, Minor Threat and Nine Inch Nails and, all these different, and also jazz, and also like, I was listening to Alan Halsworth and John Scofield, and like,
A lot of
the
influences.
Cure,
for sure.
like there
Yeah.
was so many things going on back then.
Yeah, it's true.
It was an amazing moment, and that's when alternative music was really kind of born. College radio was like pushing out all these crazy Red Hot Chili Peppers, and all
Yep.
these people
Yep.
were
REM.
broken on like REM,
Yep.
on college radio. So all of that was happening at that same time, and here I am in New York, and it's just like my dorm mate wants to make techno music, and I'm like, okay. And he takes me to like the Limelight and the Palladium on like techno, and I'm like, holy crap, like this is out of control, and it's a totally different culture, and
These are like wild clubs.
Oh
music
my
clubs in
God.
New York City.
yeah,
The wildest
Right.
clubs.
Yeah.
Especially
You
back
know,
then, the wildest clubs.
at the Tunnel, and
Yeah.
Vinyl, and Save the Robots, and all these fucking weird clubs. But anyway, it was, and it was like my first real immersion in like the gay culture of house and dance, and it was pretty wild, and I felt like I was on a different planet. I didn't quite know what to make of all this, but funny thing is that my dorm mate and I put together a record label that we had the idea of approaching some DJs in one of the main clubs, because he was more involved in the club scene than I was, and I was kind of like he was my tour guide, and we decided to approach some DJs and say, hey, we'll make you this cool techno track, and because you don't have a record out, and DJs were starting to like, this is the era where Madonna was hiring DJs to produce her record, and DJs were becoming like rock stars. So we figured we'd make a record for these guys and kind of ride their coattails. And it worked to a certain extent, but not the way we thought. We had an idea, and it was kind of a cool idea, and it got us started. It put us on a path, which is
Because they already had a name, right?
they were
Like,
a
you
name.
were
Yeah,
just
they
like-
were club kids, and
Yeah, that makes sense.
first of all, you have to put yourself on a path. Whether the goal is viable or not, it doesn't matter. It just, you get on a path, and the path leads you to other opportunities that you can't see from where you're at that moment. So we put ourselves on a path. These guys were really super excited about the record. They started putting money into it that we never thought, to do. And they were so excited. They took vocal lessons, and they hired they had a lot of money. So they hired like other producers to help produce the record. And it was my first time I went to an SSL studio, and I was like, damn, like, wow. We totally lost control of the creative process of the record. But at the same time, I was put in contact with people that I would never have been would never have ended up with before.
Right.
And they appreciated my programming. So other DJs that were big started hiring me as a ghostwriter to, make tracks for them. And that started like this crazy, like different lifestyle that I, and in career that I never expected. And
So let's put a pin in that for
Yeah.
a second. So that one experience
Mhm.
kind of leads to what? Them telling a friend? Like, how does the ball get rolling before you move into anything, let's say commercially?
well, you don't know it's going to happen that
Mhm.
way. And, it starts with a gig. Like someone says, hey, can you help me do this? Or I
So
got
it's
a project.
totally organic.
Oh, it's
at
totally
this
organic.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do it, and then you're like, okay, well, I got paid, a certain amount of money. It's not that much, but like, that's cool. It's a little side hustle, side money. And then
Especially
all
in
of a
college.
sudden,
Yeah.
and then another gig pops up, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'll do that.
Right.
And then you start stringing them together, but you never really think like, oh, well, this is going to be something.
Lo and
I
behold.
was going to say, but when did you?
Right.
Think that.
Exactly right.
Well, after, it's funny because, I knew that I was going to be graduating soon and I'd be kind of on my own. I mean, my parents did help, but I did also do a lot of it myself, with obtaining, money from NYU and scholarships and things like that. But, they don't just give scholarships out. You have to go find them. And was just something I learned too. It's not like, someone's going to just give you an award out of nowhere. You have to make yourself known, and you have to go, knock on doors of the, of the schools within the college and be like, hey, I'm going to have to drop out if I don't get XYZ money. And it's funny how they're like, well, we'll get back to you. And then they do. And you don't get everything you asked for, but you get something. And
let me ask you this, Dave. During your time where you're having all these gigs taking place in college,
yeah, was
there ever a point where the school portion of it, the academic portion of it, became secondary, and you found yourself working more in making music than you actually did working in class?
Absolutely. But so here's another example of going with the flow. So when I decided to go back to school, and when I decided to go to NYU, which is a, reputable college, and I decided to go hard. I wanted to be an electrical engineer with, I wanted to design musical equipment or something. Right. I wanted to have, I was like full science at this point. Music was important, but I wanted to find some hybrid, like University of Miami. And, it was hard to find that here at NYU, but I gave it my best shot. I was taking I was taking all these different courses, like all these math courses that were leading up to that were prerequisites for EE degree, and I was going all semesters, and I just wanted to catch up, so I was doing double summer semesters, and I burnt out. And there was no way I was going to be able to do what we were just talking about, like working with other potential clients.
That big of a course
with doing
load,
that,
your work life, right?
And it was I was happy. I was actually passing courses, with B's and with B's.
We won't mention the gentleman's C.
But that to me was amazing.
gentleman's C.
I'm in this, this calculus course that there's 400 people in an auditorium. I'm like, how am I going to do this? I don't never want to go back to that. But the thing is, I did it, and I it was but at one point I had to let all that go because I wanted to get the major in the science degree. But at some point, again, I let it go and I went with the flow, and I went into computer science, and I decided not to major in it. I decided to minor in it. And
but you did finish. You did get your degree.
I did. But the bottom line is I let all of that extra course load go so that I could pursue these types of gigs. And when I did that, it opened up a ton of time. And because the music courses at NYU and the music tech courses they were kind of easy for me, so I didn't have to spend too much time, so I could actually really drill down into my own clientele at the time. So that's what happened.
That's amazing. And so at this point, you're getting busy, you're building a reputation, you're building a network, you've got more work than you can handle. When does the cutting room, was there an intermediate step? Like when does the cutting room come to life, and what was that progression?
Okay, so it's 1993, right? I've now moved out of this railroad flat on Bleecker and Thompson, right? That I had my little studio set up, and I'm now at 25th Street, 328 East 25th, between 1st and 2nd, and that's where it blew up. It was kind of a commercial space, but you could live there, and it was $900 a month, which I thought I would never be able to afford. but I did it, and I could make all the noise in the world. No one would complain, and I put together a studio there. I gotta say, this is pre-internet, and the internet for us back then was the Village Voice. The Village Voice was, if you were looking for an apartment, you'd look there. If you were looking for a roommate, you'd look there.
Anything.
Anything. Everything.
Anything.
If you wanted to know where to go, whose bands were playing, everything.
Right, who's playing.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the pulse of New York City. And in the back of the classifieds was a studio section. And everybody, including the Hit Factory, was advertising back there, if you can imagine that. Of course, the Hit Factory ads were really nice. And then the rest of us were like,
the Hit Factory, just so people know, is a high-level studio.
Michael Jackson, Bruce Springsteen,
John Lennon, Michael Jackson.
Right, yeah,
Exactly.
like God, he records there.
God records there.
It's funny because Troy became a friend later on and led a mentor to me, which I never. I just never saw myself, in the company of these guys that are legends. So
You're in that world, Dave.
I don't know if
Let me jump in. Let me jump in. So one of the things I always admired about you is whatever money you made, you would dump it right back into the studio. Like everything just kind of get turned
What
around.
an idiot. No, it's true because this is a
but
lifestyle.
It's admirable.
It's a passion.
It was admirable.
It's my.
You would buy new gear. You would
right.
buy new whatever. You kept pouring. Even in those early days,
Yep.
Dave, you I just know from
I
knowing
know,
you
man.
that you just,
It was because it's just like you're watching the dream evolve, and what's better than that? Like I don't really know what I would spend it on other than trying to make something even cooler.
I can make you a list of things. You
Well,
should
yeah.
see.
Listen. I bought a sailboat, and then I bought another one, and then I bought another one. So I get it.
There you go.
But the fact is, even those things have to work for their keep.
That's right.
Yep. But I'm fascinated by putting together mechanisms that can generate their own existence, in terms of financial existence. That to me, is a life hack. Like if we can put together a place that we can all realize our dreams in, like this laboratory that is the cutting room.
Right.
Why not put more? This is a hobby gone insane.
Yeah, but that's your brilliance of sustainability, Dave. Is that's how you've always been able to make these things work, right? You keep putting profit back into the product to make it better, to let it support itself, and like you said, you did that with the boat as well. But I want to
because
stay
it's
on
a
the path
passion
here.
It's a passion,
Right? Of course. So you're having. You're in the apartment. You have a studio essentially built. I mean, I don't know if you're calling it the cutting room yet at this point. But how do you go from there? You are calling it cutting room.
Well, no. About halfway through, I remember there was a studio called the Playroom, and I like the idea of the Playroom as a cool name, but I don't know how. I mean, the cutting room is kind of a generic name in a lot of ways. It's fortunate that we became the owners of that kind of realm in New York City. But I'm not sure how we actually. Well, I actually came to that point, but it was kind of like I had a bunch of names, and then finally it was like I got to just pick one. Because I was advertising.
So you picked the
and
good
I was
one.
just
I'll say that.
I like the idea of the Playroom, but that was already taken.
Right.
So, because my happiest moments as a kid was in my playroom. So I tried to do something similar, but so the cutting room it was, and then the funny thing about the Village Voice was those ads. All the smaller studios, the mom and pop studios like Baby Monster and all these other studios back in the day. They were all in there. But
Yep.
if you wanted to be first, you had to put like number one or A. So everything had to be like A1, the cutting room, the A1, like A1111111. Like there was like
Game
everyone
of
was
the ad
hacking
game.
the
I love it.
ads. It was so
We do it now with
ridiculous.
algorithms. It's the same idea.
Right,
just at
right.
the
It's
beginning.
the same thing. It was just so funny back then. But look, that put us on the map. Those stupid ads that were like, I don't know, $20 a week or whatever. I mean, it got a ton of calls, and there was a lot of ridiculously stupid projects that I did, and but they, allowed me to buy another sampler or another piece of gear or another processor, upgrade my computer, from
That's what you did, man.
from 10 megahertz to 20 megahertz.
So those early days,
Not
so those
gigahertz.
early days, right? Megahertz, right?
Yeah.
So those early days for you, when you have the initial start of the cutting room, your work day, I would have to assume, was not a 9 to 5 gig.
No.
Even if you tried to have it be that way. What are the early days of that career like for you?
I did the lion's share of the work, and I was working with a lot of DJs who were, night owls. So they'd get up at like 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and have breakfast, and then
5 p.m. and have breakfast.
right. I mean,
I like the way you say that.
these are club kids, man.
Yeah.
they were paying the bills, and they had money to do that, and it was that was the era back then of these super clubs, and these DJs all wanted to have like the hottest mixes, and I was there to help them do that, and that meant I worked from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. and it was I was younger back then. I think it was, still I was like 25, so I could handle that. But eventually I had to bring people in to help me. So that's when the studio started taking some structure, where I funny enough, I ran into a friend of mine who I work with at Berkeley in Boston, and hired him as an engineer, and then trained up another engineer to so that I could take some of the more higher profile gigs and not have to work with I mean, Larry, the professional world is not always professional. There's
No.
we don't
No,
turn
no.
down anybody. Like if they have money to come into the studio, you can come.
Sure.
But they could be completely
Yeah.
insane, and they are sometimes. And you're like, all right, well, we'll try to make the best of it. But
It's a childlike business in that regard, right? These are all just big kids, basically. who
Yeah.
are, like playing with their toys, and it's a
right, but
it's a whole other world.
the ones who are never going to actually get anywhere, you still have to work with. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, exactly. So Dave, just knowing your story, I know that one of the pivotal things that happened there was something that was totally innocent at the time. I guess Mike Mangini, who's became a great client of yours and really brought a lot of work to Cutting Room.
absolutely.
He wanted to make a tape transfer. Is that how this began?
Yeah, well, I had a 2-inch tape machine there, which was like, if you wanted to get more work and get more professional work, you needed to have a 2-inch machine, which allowed folks to take their tapes from, Sony Music or bigger studios,
Any other studio, really? Yeah.
any other studio that was worth their salt,
Right.
In the professional realm would have a 2-inch machine. So I put money into buying a 2-inch machine. And of course I had the 16-track half-inch machine, which was there from, back in the day. And, those formats were listed on my Village Voice ad. And Mike Mangini saw it. And he had a bunch of stuff he wanted to transfer from 16-track to 2-inch. And, Mike came over for a tape transfer, and we hit it off. Mike came through, and he said kind of like what a lot of people say, I'm going to bring I need a place to work, need a second home, blah, blah, blah. And, the most important thing is like, you could be skeptical about that and negative, like, yeah, sure, whatever. Everyone says this, but you got to stay open. It's really important to stay open and to take chances. And if I didn't take a chance with Mike, and he didn't take a chance with me, I would have never met you.
That's probably true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, again, I can't stress the fact of staying open is really, really important, because there's a lot to close up over,
Right.
Everyone gets burned and this and that,
Right.
but you got to figure out a way to stay open. And for Mike, he made it easy because he checked in on me and he wanted to see what was going on. And, when I would look at potential properties to move, of course, through the Village Voice, because that was what you did.
That's right.
We would go and look at different places together. And I don't know why he was hanging out with me, or he never asked to like be business partners or like, but he was interested in seeing what would happen from all of this. He kept in touch while I found the place on 678 Broadway. Yeah. I guess, yeah, I mean, I had some NYU colleagues that I was working with, and we didn't have much money. I mean we maybe had like 10 or 15,000 saved up. We weren't really planning on building a major recording studio ever. It was just going to be a project studio. And, just to kind of flash forward a little bit, like, I think I was making like $45,000-$50,000 at like my little space. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm making, and the next year we were making 450,000.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
and that's what Mike brought to the table.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was,
So let's kind of define like what Mike, did. I mean, so Mike is a producer, and Mike ended up bringing clients when I worked there, which is a little after that particular version of the Cutting Room opened, and Joan Osborne and Bruce Hornsby and like all these major artists, he's bringing them in.
David Byrne
to produce their records. So. It just goes to show you how a partnership with somebody like that, and it wasn't even a partnership. It was just an understanding. Hey, I'll bring you some work, and I'll bring you more work, and you developed a relationship, a working relationship that
it was amazing.
Really
Yeah,
benefited
it was really
both of
good.
you throughout the years.
Yeah.
Right?
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. And we certainly had our differences at times.
Oh
We
yes.
were-
Oh yes, you did. We won't get into some of those stories.
No,
but that's okay.
but they're awesome.
They are awesome.
Mike and I are still friends, and I hope to see him soon. But the thing is that it could happen for anybody.
Yeah.
As long as you stay open to it, and you just don't know how the future is going to unfold unless you're open to it. And I keep saying that, but like it's really important.
But
not
you
to shut
literally
down.
built the place from Home Depot runs and no work permit, and like you just
No,
like
yeah.
you just
Well, because
you made it happen.
I still do that. I was actually at Home Depot earlier today. It was like specking flooring for like a certain room.
All right, we got so much more to cover here.
Yeah, I know.
So 97 is when you and I first crossed paths.
That's right.
I was working River Sound, as I said, Steely Dan, and that had closed. I was working for the Toy Specialists, which is an audio rental company. And I remember Eric Walters, shout out to Eric Walters, was the driver. And so you were renting equipment, and he would be the driver that would run all over New York City and bring these pieces of rental equipment. And he came back to the shop, and I was a tech. I was, checking gear in and out, making sure everything worked, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, hey, I just talked to this guy who needs a studio manager, and I gave him your name. And I'm like, right. Good job. And we had lunch, and we hit it off. And I remember
man.
you saying to me, come in for a week and just take notes. Just tell us what we're doing wrong, and then we'll have a discussion at the end of the week, and we'll go from there. And it was the beginning of a beautiful relationship for 3.5 years.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
Look, you keep saying 3.5. I'm going to say
It's 3.5.
in my mind, it's like 5 to 10
It's
years.
3.5. Well, because
Dude,
I brought on a lot of
know,
people, Billy Donahue, and I brought in a lot of
my
people
God.
that I knew.
There was so much stuff.
Yeah.
And that is really the most important part, because like a studio manager who creates a culture at the studio there's no better way to make everything work.
You've always said to me the most important thing is the team, right? Like who you have there is more important than the equipment and anything else.
We used to have our staff meetings up on the roof with the barbecue. It was that was the kind of stuff that.
But Dave, you were the cool boss. You took us skiing, and you took us. We would go to Bills games together,
that, man.
tailgate, and like.
Oh, dude!
So we were
Dude,
friends.
You made me buy Yankees.
Yes,
like
that's right. Yankees tickets, you name it.
Yankees tickets, like the season tickets for the Friday pass, which culminated in like 2 World Series that I got to see thanks to you. But no, I mean it's a lifestyle, and that's
Let me talk about
important.
that lifestyle a little bit.
Yep.
So while I'm
Do it.
manager of the cutting room, first thing Dave did is hand me an open invoice list, right? All the people who haven't paid him over the years.
Oh, geez.
Right? So I have to attack this list.
So
So it was
receivables, man.
Like the receivables.
Bitch.
It was a lot of, young rappers coming in and paying $1,000 in $5 bills. There was a lot, a lot of that going on.
Even $1 bills.
Even $1 bills. There was a lot of, 4 a.m. phone calls of, so-and-so wants to take their tapes. And I'm like, by no means are you to give up those tapes.
Right. Oh,
But
my
if
God.
I say there's a gun involved, let them take the tapes. So there was a lot of that.
How can I package that for you?
So managing a recording studio was hard enough. Owner, you take that stress on a different level. But we were able to take steps and kind of develop the business, I think, in a way that it wasn't we started renting equipment to clients. We started making money in other ways that were more
We
important.
really made a bunch of money, and that was awesome, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
We did. And then it ended terribly.
That really, well, because of a girl.
Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
because of a
Always.
girl.
Always.
There's a theme here.
Because I decided to date the intern. That's right. Let's just put it out there.
That's right.
So, as the outsider,
No one else was interested in me. What could I do?
as the outsider in this conversation who has not worked in a recording studio, I'm curious about what goes on during a great session. I guess we could talk about a bad session also, but let's focus on the positive. Like, you've had so many legends come through and so many great artists. Can you describe a moment, a session, a highlight from your journey that just really stood out to you?
I'd have to say the Imani sessions. Imani Coppola was a artist that was signed to Sony, and through Mike Mangini was producing it. And, Mike was very gracious with, your involvement in any session. He wanted me to be his engineer, assistant producer for a lot of the sessions, but I was just trying to get a handle on being like all of a sudden, like I said, we went from 40 grand to 450,000, and I trying to wrap my head around that and figure out how to.
Yeah,
There's a lot of responsibilities that come with that type of like influx of, business, and we couldn't even fucking order paper clips, and know where they were being. It was just, it was hard.
Yep.
So there was a moment where Mike said to me, "I want you to be the music director of Imani Coppola and take her on tour with like Jamiroquai." And I was just like, "Oh, my dream has come back. I can actually be a touring musician. I could do this.
Yeah.
But I and that's how I met Larry, because I couldn't run the studio and do that. So Larry came in under those pretenses, and
Just Blaze was working there. We had a crazy crew, man.
yeah,
It was fun.
we did. I always felt like the studio was a place that it was like a magnet that attracted opportunities for the staff. Like not just for me, but for everybody, and including you, Larry.
Sure.
Through I think meeting Jake, and like these opportunities, were just not only for me.
Well, take it a step further, right? I'm not working at Sirius XM if I'm not working at Cutting Room, because I never meet Jake. Jake Clans, who ends up being the reason I moved to Sirius XM. So
right.
There's a lot of dreams that are made there and things that happen. I want to talk about your sustainability, though, Dave, because I already talked about how you kept pouring money back into the business. You decided to buy the SSL against my better judgment, and I made that mistake. You're like, I want to buy this huge, expensive console, and I'm like, don't do that. And you didn't listen to me, and it was the smartest thing you ever did. So good for you.
I don't know, man.
Good for you. But
that was a lot of money, dude.
But the pivot, I want to talk about your art of the pivot. Like even during COVID, like you opened it up for teaching purposes. You did things.
Yeah, not during COVID, but the teaching thing was happening during like the implosion of the industry of commercial recording. So necessity is the mother of all invention.
Yeah.
And at some point in 2006 or 7, I had been listening to a lot of online radio, and mostly the station that I really loved was KXP out of Seattle. And at a certain point in time, I had a chance to really help them out. And I did a lot of things pro bono. And what ended up happening from that pro bono, kind of relationship, because at that point I was like, well, if it's all going to hell, I'm just going to start doing things I like to do.
Yeah.
And because of that, it launched us in a different direction, and got us a bunch of new clientele that I didn't really realize that were available to us. So,
smart move. It was a smart move on your part.
I really can't say like I planned it out. It was just a gut feeling, and it was like, I want to do this because it's cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes when everything is looking not great, sometimes it's really good to be able to do something that you love to do, like a passion project that can spur all kinds of good things that you can manifest, things that you don't realize that are there.
So you alluded to it a minute ago, the implosion of basically the entire commercial recording industry, because home studios became the norm. Everybody could do what they needed to do, and it was really only high-end artists that started using commercial recording studios in a lot of ways. So not only have you been able to keep your head above water, but you've really thrived, right? So you've been able to open a second space. Like, just talk about all the tough decisions that you had to make along the way to thrive in a business that was really closing.
When I started in the industry, and when you were there, the recorded, media was the industry.
That was thriving. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the industry made its money on recorded media, and that all fell apart, in the aughts, and piracy became rampant, and there was really nobody, taking the lead, and we just had to figure it out. I mean, not me figuring it out, but the industry had to figure out where it was going, and that was really dependent on bandwidth. I knew as soon as bandwidth became, much faster, the distribution model would change. And, we bought a place in the old Tower Records building. And, we did that because, we had a 11-year lease in the old place. And I felt like, it was important for us to be able to own the property where the business was, because otherwise we'd always be at the mercy of the landlords. Because when we first started the lease at 678 Broadway, it was like $3,000 a month, and it was like a 4,500 square foot space it was insane.
Yeah.
And by the time the lease was over, it was like $20,000 a month. So we didn't pay that, but if we wanted to renew, that's what we would have paid, because, there was a super renaissance in the area, of NoHo. I don't even think they called it NoHo back then. Like, NoHo was coined during the 90s and 2000s.
To shoot real estate up through the...
Right, and it did. So by the time we were, done with our lease, I had saved up quite a bit of coin as a deposit, and the idea was to be able to buy a place. And make a long story short, we settled on the Silk Building, which is the old Tower Records flagship, and we built out. At the time, I put everything I had into it, and then
You've always done that,
and
man. Always.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about that. And I also think, like, there's an important point here. Putting everything you have into something is a sacrifice, and the sacrifice that you make is, maybe a relationship, with a significant other, or there's no balance at this level, and that is, the sad part of it. To be competitive, you have to do things that take up a lot of your time.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing in the deep end of the pool, man. Like, you gotta pour
So
everything
there's really no work-life balance.
Yep.
And I think one of the most important things to realize is, like, at this level, your work-life balance is essentially you're committed to the team that you're working with, and they're your family. And that was the way we were.
Yep.
And when we worked, and there is really nothing else besides what you're doing.
And families fight. Let's be real.
They do. And they make up, and things are great. But that's a really important thing.
Yeah.
When you're operating at this level, work-life balance is bullshit. Like, you're committed to your lifestyle at work, and your family is the people at work. And at some point you might be able to turn that around. But when you're hungry and you're struggling, and you're making a name for yourself, it's just, unless your significant other is accepting of that, or is involved in the same aspects of work that you are, and is part of that work family, which can also cause problems.
Yes, it can. No, but you're making a good point. I mean,
there's
you
got to go all in.
Yeah.
At this level,
right?
And I have regrets about doing that, but the experiences I've had outweigh the regrets. Really, at the end of the day.
Talk a little bit about, some of the people that have been through there and built their careers through. You mentioned Ken Lewis already. We mentioned Just Blaze, Nasty.
You?
Me. Yeah. I mean, there's so many of us who, this became not a stopping point in our careers, but a real growing point in our careers, where we really became something else and saw that next level, which allowed us to get to the next level. And you must be so proud of that.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And that to me is, fulfilling in a deep way. I didn't, I didn't have a family. I didn't have children, and who knows? Maybe that, may still not. Maybe that, will change. But
this is your baby, Dave.
yeah, but I don't. Yeah,
Let's be real.
it is. But each person that comes through and makes their mark here, it makes me really proud to be able to, feel like I helped in some, significant or insignificant way to, help people find their way. 'Cause they help me find my way. It's a two-way street.
It's incredible.
I hope that, the business, the cutting room and, the essence of what we do here continues long after, I've retired or, I've just fallen off the boat in the middle of the ocean.
I was going to say you're in the middle of the Caribbean on your yacht.
That sounds really, really good, Larry. And one day I hope that is the truth. But like the studio, that boat I put into, it's a working boat.
Yeah.
There's a business model involved in that. And that boat has helped us make the construction of our second space, out in Chelsea, a possibility.
So unlike you to make money and keep dumping it back into the business. I don't
I don't know what's wrong with me.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Go
So,
ahead, Larry.
Dave, that sets up a timely question. I'm thinking about you're starting by looking at ads in the Village Voice, and then we've talked about, to be first in line, you need to be the cutting room, the cutting room.
A111.
Then we get to...
There's so many, I wish I had copies of the paper to show you of all the ridiculous things people would do to become first on the list.
Well,
it made a difference.
Well, now it's, the algorithms, it's social media, it's podcasting, it's YouTube. I mean, the world has changed so much in the time that you have been on this journey. I mean,
isn't it so cool?
Absolutely. But what does the future hold? Where do you see things going for your industry, your business, and for the people who are coming up behind you?
Well, I think the best way to understand that is to actually talk to ChatGPT. Have some deep conversations with it.
I've done that multiple times today on multiple different subjects.
Yes. I mean, we're at the knee of the curve right now of technological insanity in good and bad ways. And I think it's really one of the most important or exciting moments to be alive, to see what's happening, good and bad. Everyone's tried to forecast what music is going to be like, even, during the moments where Napster was disrupting the business and it's really hard to kind of say, well, it's going to look like this or look like that. But all I can say is innovation will prevail and creativity will prevail and authenticity and creativity will prevail. Even though the future is, it's delicate and it's terrifying and it's fascinating. So,
is it a threat to your business?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Why?
Because humans will always need a place to go in a large, urban center cultural center like New York, and share ideas, integrate their dreams and careers, and we'll always be there'll always be a need for a creative hub to to go to and to be human.
A laboratory.
A laboratory. Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like we're kind of akin to sort of like and I'm going to go way out on a limb right now, but to like, like a Andy Warhol factory style, culture that we're developing here. There are so many talented, people that work here, and the culture that is, resonating from the folks that work here, is far-reaching, and I feel like we're part of a movement to a certain extent, and that's exciting for like
Wow.
A 58-year-old dude who's like.
There it is. He gave away the age.
I am. Come on, man.
But it keeps you going. It keeps you going. Dave, last question.
Yeah.
Somebody coming into the work world today, who has dreams and aspirations of getting to, and who knows if it's even possible, but getting to a similar place to where you've wound up. What advice do you have for a young person coming into the business today?
Sure. Well, where I've wound up today is in great debt, and I have to sleep on a couch once in a while.
So be prepared.
But I'm doing what I love.
Don't follow in these footsteps, apparently, is the message, right?
Yeah. No, I've willfully done it. I mean, I could sell off all the assets and live like this cool life that, I don't even know what would be cool for me, because like, it's not what I want to do.
Oh, you'd be so bored, Dave.
Yeah, my wife would be happy.
Fair enough.
She'd be like, finally, but the bottom line is like, this is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle commitment. And, I just love doing what we do. And, I'm willing to sleep on a couch for that. I'm willing to go into debt because I do see some amazing thing. I want to see what's on the other side. That was the whole thing why I didn't sell out during like the period where bandwidth wasn't fast enough to support a digital distribution model. I want to see what it's like. Like, we sold physical media, now we have a digital, distribution model, and like, where's it going from now? Who would have like called the AI? We were just like recovering from, the piracy issue of like downloads, and now we have streaming, and that seems to have curtailed, like, we're starting to monetize like recorded media again, and then all of a sudden AI hits, and it's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But I'm psyched for it, man. Like, I really want to, this is beyond my wildest dreams.
Wow.
Really. And I think anyone who wants to get involved in this has to, number one, stay open and to the possibilities and opportunities that, lots of people will kind of like go, oh, that's nothing, but you got to stay open, because like some of the most ridiculous opportunities or propositions sometimes pay off, as we've discussed before. That's key. You can't waste your time with ridiculous you'll learn how to identify what you should stay open for as you get better at it, and but have fun, and because that's the only way you're going to stay in the game. Like, if you're not having fun, you won't be able to be competitive.
Yeah.
And if you're not competitive, you might as well do something else, because this is ultimately got to be fun. No matter what business you're in, it has to be something you love to do. It can't be like, oh, I got to do this again. It's just not going to work. And fortunately, the cutting room has been a place where people could, kind of deposit their dreams and hopefully get interest on them. I know I did. So
that's an incredible story. I mean, what you've been able to create from where you started, I can't imagine the satisfaction, the pride, the joy that comes from all of that.
That helps when you're sleeping on the couch in the lounge, which I'll be doing tonight, by the way.
Right.
Look, we just got a nice refrigerator. We just bought a new refrigerator. I'm pretty happy with that. It makes ice now. So
nice. Big time.
Well, Dave, this has just been absolutely remarkable. Thank you for the time. Congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a great time tonight. Thanks.
So that was Dave Crafa of the Cutting Room Studios, a really incredible place that I had the opportunity to see not that long ago. And Dave clearly is a very interesting guy. Larry Shea, thank you so much for bringing him to us. And why don't you lead us into the wrap-up of this conversation?
Yeah, I've known Dave's story for a long time, obviously working for him, but really cool to share it with everybody else, because it's a story that needs to be told. So many lessons, so many life lessons, so many lessons about building a business from the ground floor up, literally from his dorm room to what it is now, which is an amazing enterprise. Multiple facilities, amazing what he's built, But you could just hear the energy when he speaks, right? It's contagious, right? It just, his drive, his passion, and everything gets poured into the business. He goes and says several times that it's a lifestyle, right? So you really see that he's putting everything into it. It's what he's done the entire time that I've known him. But the thing I really take away from this, guys, is the sacrifice, He works harder than anybody I know. I don't know how he finds the time to do everything that he does. He's on, 3 different coasts, flying all over the place, running his business. Really admirable what he's put together. I don't even know when he sleeps, to be honest with you. So, but lastly, and most importantly, how much do we miss the Village Voice in New York City?
Yes. I'm glad you said this. I really, really miss that from back in the day. Oh, the one thing I took away from this is that he really has performed a miracle with this, with the Cutting Room Floor Studios, because being associated with Larry Shea, that in and of itself is just surviving that. It's like going to war. It's like going to war. Of course I was, but seriously. We talk a lot about the show about, following your passion, as you kind of mentioned, and obviously the passion he has for what he does, it absolutely exudes everything he says, every action he does. But the one thing I think the one thing we try to get across in the show is that, look, if you pick a career that you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and nothing can be truer than in terms of Dave Crafa. I mean, he took a hobby and turned it into his career. Not many of us can ever say, I can't take comic book collecting and turn that into my career. It's not going to happen. He took a hobby where he was just really into music, really into technology, combined the two, and see what he's done. It's really, really miraculous. And the fact that he's able to continue to do this to this day at such a high level, he's one of the most respected people in the business, that in and of itself is very, very telling.
Absolutely. And I think for me, the key takeaway was to be open. He came back to that concept or theme a whole bunch of times. If you're open and you let possibilities present themselves and you wrap your arms around them and just keep going, there's no telling what the future holds and what you can accomplish. And I just think that's incredible advice, especially within an industry that has been flipping upside down and changing the entire time that he has been in it. So clearly that is a philosophy that's worked for him, and it's a philosophy that can work for everybody else, and no matter what field they're in. So with that, Dave, thank you so much for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. We also thank you for joining us. If this episode made you think of somebody who could be a great guest, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us through the contact page of our website at NoWrongChoices.com to let us know. While you're there, check out the blog for a deeper look at our takeaways from each episode. You can also connect with us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X. On behalf of Larry Shea, Tushar Saxena, and me, Larry Samuels, thank you again for listening. We'll be back next week with another inspiring episode.